Hi, I'm Brandon Neely with the Civil War Institute, and today I'd like to talk about a college fraternity that built a cave to hide runaway slaves on the Underground Railroad. Today I'm standing on Culp's Hill at the Gettysburg National Military Park. Today, the area is full of monuments and well-kept trails, but in 1850 that would not have been the case. There were some dirt roads and plenty of unkempt paths, but for the most part, the landscape was defined by its stone outcroppings, large hills, and masses of trees. Just south of the town of Gettysburg, this area became a temporary hiding spot for black men and women escaping slavery. As historian Cooper Wingert describes, the Underground Railroad was less of a clearly marked path and was instead more of a series of secret movements from one friendly home to another. A few of those friendly homes were nearby. Near Spangler's Spring to our south, James McAllister hid fugitives in the machinery of his mill. Nearby, the Wirt family, anti-slavery activists, helped to transport runaways to McAllister's mill, sometimes hiding them among the rocks while being followed by slave catchers. One of these children, John Howard Wirt, provides some of the best evidence historians have regarding the Underground Railroad in Gettysburg. It's important to note here the challenges historians have in identifying these activists. First, helping runaways was illegal. Conductors could not publicly share information about the railroad, and certainly could not have published it in the materials that historians use to understand the past. Thus, many stories of the Underground Railroad could only be published after the war, although some escaped narratives were published beforehand. Even further, many of those involved in the Underground Railroad would not have identified themselves as activists or criminals. In many cases, spaces regarded as innocent were transformed in moments of desperate need to protect human life. While participation on the railroad was a political act, not all who were part of it would have viewed it as such, and thus never publicized their involvement. Second, many of those who aided escaped slaves were black. In antebellum America, access to education was systematically denied to both free and enslaved black Americans. So if the Underground Railroad activists were able to safely document or share information, many of them would not have been able to read or write. Word of mouth served as a powerful form for spreading information, but left little for historians to interpret. Today's video discusses John Howard Wirt's role on the Underground Railroad, not because he was the only activist, but one of the few with the privilege to record and share his story. Wirt grew up in an anti-slavery household before attending Pennsylvania College, now known as Gettysburg College. During his time there, Wirt joined a fraternity known as the Beta Deltas, or the BDs. For those inside the group, they were known as the Black Ducks. The Black Ducks were not what we would describe as an academic fraternity, and so they got into a fair amount of trouble. Known for their love of wine, card games, and silly songs, they lived in a wood frame house on Middle Street, across from a Methodist church. Their home, which they called the slum, unfortunately no longer stands. Inside the slum and in town, they took pleasure in making churchgoers shake their heads, annoying law enforcement, and being a thorn in the side of the Pennsylvania College faculty. They did have one friend at the college, though. John Hopkins, the free black Pennsylvania College school janitor, was beloved by the students of the college. In fact, he was given the title of honorary vice president by a student poem published in 1860. Paid only $15 a month, John Hopkins was responsible for countless duties on campus. Henry Minnick, a member of the Black Ducks, fondly remembered John Hopkins' role in cleaning up on-campus pranks. In one instance, the school's supply of math textbooks were buried in a coffin on the campus, which John Hopkins dug up. In another, the college bell was stolen. In another, a classroom was filled with hay, which John Hopkins had to remove. While we can't know for certain, it would not be surprising to discover that these pranks were pulled by the Black Ducks. In addition to their antics on campus, they had a number of hideouts across the area that were probably used to drink and to socialize. One was here on Culp's Hill, alternatively known as Number 3 or Dows the Glim. The Black Ducks converted an existing rock structure into a miniature cave to hide themselves and other items. Number 3 referring to the number of Black Ducks members, and Dows the Glim being an old Scottish phrase meaning turn out the lights. While today this spot is open to air, the Black Ducks walled up each end and layered the opening with cordwood, then covered all of it with dirt and leaves. Although over time it is filled up with soil and leaves, it was originally 10 feet deep. To get in, the Black Ducks used one carefully concealed entrance at the point here where the upward swell of the hill gives a steep descent into the rayless dungeon. This spot would not remain a stomping ground for long, though. On a winter night, sometime in the late 1850s, while socializing at the slum, a friend of the Black Ducks rushed inside with a dazed and freezing fugitive slave. The man was starving, and law enforcement was searching for him a few streets away to return him to slavery. He said that his name was Jim and that he didn't know where he was from. The Black Ducks, many of whom came from abolitionist families, fed and warmed the man, then secretly rushed him right here to douse the Glim. For 2 whole nights, Jim hid here in the dark before the Black Ducks helped send him to a community of Quakers in York Springs. With Jim's rescue, the Black Ducks had officially become a part of the Underground Railroad. Between that December night and the Battle of Gettysburg, the Black Ducks aided in a number of escapes through Gettysburg. In doing so, they became yet another friendly home in the network of abolitionists in Pennsylvania. They also formed a unique way of transmitting messages to one another: bookmarks. When passing information about enslaved people who needed help, the Black Ducks would emboss a slip of paper with a specific symbol and write a number. This slip of paper would be placed in a book, which would be given to another member. When looking at these bookmarks, Black Ducks used the embossed symbol to determine where the groups of runaways were hidden, and used the number to determine how many were in the group. The Black Ducks also expanded their network to other conductors on the railroad. The black community in Gettysburg, especially in the southwest portion of Gettysburg, had a number of reported activists. Basil Biggs, who would go on to help rebury the dead after the battle, was rumored to be involved with the Underground Railroad, as well as Mag Palm, a washerwoman who had nearly been kidnapped herself in 1858. Most relevant, however, was John Hopkins, the well-loved janitor of Pennsylvania College. A partially constructed railroad cut, commissioned by Thaddeus Stevens, provided an untracked pathway towards Gettysburg, skirting along the edge of the Pennsylvania College campus. Iron workers employed by Stevens would shuttle fugitives to the college, where they would make contact with John Hopkins. From there, he would notify the Black Ducks and other activists who would move them to the next location. While the Black Ducks played an important role in the Underground Railroad in Gettysburg, the fraternity ceased to exist in 1863. This is probably due to the realities of the war. Of the 33 confirmed members of Beta Delta, 26 served with the Union Army in enlisted service. Of the remaining 7, 6 served as independent scouts, medics, or clergymen. Many had graduated by the time the battle occurred, although some would return in combat roles during the conflict. During the battle, this area saw absolutely incredible amounts of violence. According to Charlie Fennell, over 1/5 of the lead fired in the entire battle was fired on Culp's Hill on July 3rd alone. A site of fighting on all 3 days, Union soldiers constructed breastworks and trenches along these hills to fend off repeated Confederate assaults. As one soldier remembered, solid shot went crashing through the woods, adding the danger from falling limbs of trees to that from erratic fragments of exploding shells. John Howard Wirt, who had graduated from the Black Ducks and enlisted in the 209th Pennsylvania Volunteers, described the scene in this way. Along the massive works that angled and zigzagged over the low ridges in the rear of the hill and that skirted the blood-soaked swamps along Rock Creek, they gazed in awe at the great forests of giant oaks shot to death with musketry. 2 members of the Black Ducks, in the aftermath of the battle, sought out their old haunt and discovered that Union breastworks had been erected right here, over Douse the Glims, and that the roof had caved in. One remembered decades later, "Peace to its ruins. It has served its purpose. The Black Ducks now have sterner work than smoking pipes and planning devilry in darksome caves, and business has ceased forever on the Underground Railroad." The Black Ducks and Douse the Glim were over. The Black Ducks provide a fantastic group with which to understand the intricacies of the Underground Railroad in the Civil War. Even near the Pennsylvania-Maryland border, the vast network of friendly homes and caves connected enslaved Americans with allies of all sorts. In this case, the power and need for anti-slavery activism extended all the way into college fraternities. The Black Ducks' love for secrecy and bending rules turned a group of rowdy young men into activists, fighting for the fate of countless human lives. The enormous political and social significance of this work is difficult to overstate, and almost all of the men continued this fight on the battlefields of the nation. At least 2 Black Ducks lost their lives in this continued fight against the institution of slavery. And second, it sheds light on the Underground Railroad here in Gettysburg. The Black Duck's bookmarks identify a number of locations in the area used to hide and move escaped slaves. This gives historians a number of locations to research, analyze, and study deeply. However, it also reveals the realities of the Underground Railroad that are difficult to research or analyze. Because of the secretive and illegal nature of aiding runaways, there often is little documentary evidence for how, when, and who made these journeys. The unique makeup of Gettysburg, at once a college town and an agricultural area situated just north of the Mason-Dixon line, exemplifies many of these challenges and opportunities. The town had an active black community, and yet also attempted kidnappings to bring black Gettysburgians into Southern slavery. Anti-slavery speeches were made by Pennsylvania college students, while the college's founder was married to a woman who owned slaves. In a border town with so many different perspectives, many aspects of daily life could quickly become forms of activism. While the Battle of Gettysburg provides us with an entertaining historical spectacle, it occurred in a town and a region which had to reconcile with the realities of American slavery for decades beforehand. The people who lived, worked, and passed through Gettysburg were not unaware of the war's meaning or its consequences. Instead, they had been active participants in the fight for freedom long before July 1st, 1863. This location on the battlefield provides a unique place to consider and grapple with the actions of the Black Ducks, John Hopkins, other activists, and enslaved men and women risking their lives for freedom. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you learned something today, it helps us out immensely to like, share, and comment on these videos. I'm Brandon Neely with the Civil War Institute, and thank you for watching.